I work as a sleep scientist. After my last discovery, I've refused to sleep for 3 weeks straight. I usually enjoy working in the sleep lab, but after what I discovered last night, I don't think I'll ever be able to sleep properly again. Since working as a sleep scientist, I've seen my fair share of terrifying and panic-inducing cases. I've had to hear the blood-curdling screams of kids with sleep paralysis claiming to see demons. I've had people attack me in their sleep. I've seen just about every type of terrifying sleep-related issue, but nothing could have prepared me for my last patient. He was a man in his mid-20s who had lapsed into a coma a few days before he was transferred to our facility. He was sent here so we could monitor him, since a coma is very similar to deep sleep, so it's great for sleep research. I was originally hesitant to take on this patient for observation. The reason is, this patient presents with a whole list of strange and unusual symptoms, yet we have no idea what could have caused it. The patient's brother reports that the patient had randomly begun suffering from extreme hallucinations and headaches, so decided to go to sleep early. A whole week goes by, and he never wakes up, despite having no visible health issues. His brother had just assumed he went to sleep for the night, not knowing it would be his last sleep. I knew it was going to be a challenge finding out what caused this, so I hooked him up to our monitoring machines and began with our usual process. But I never could have guessed the horrifying discoveries I would soon make. When I began monitoring the patient, I noticed something extremely strange. His brainwaves weren't typical of a normal coma patient, but all his other physical attributes are. His pupils are unresponsive to light, and he is unresponsive to all stimuli applied, including painful stimuli, except for reflex responses. But his brain waves seemed like he was still awake, still fully capable and conscious. The professor in charge of our lab had a theory that the patient may have been exposed to some airborne pathogen that infected his brain, which may explain the unusual brain activity. But something was telling me it was something a lot worse than that. Whatever the diagnosis, he was a medical mystery and could have held the key to some obscure disease, and by extension, a new discovery. We were looking at uncharted and undiscovered scientific territory here. So, this afternoon, one by one, my colleagues at the lab checked out for home. Soon there was just me left, staying overnight alone to monitor the patient. I have done this, as I say, many times before. It's the usual routine. I turned on my personal laptop and checked emails and so on. Can't use speakers or headphones on the chance that patients call out or make a noise during the night. Can't risk missing something like that. I was reading something online when I first heard footsteps coming from the corridor. I didn't think anything of it. Probably one of the patients had woken up and had to use the restroom or something. I was immersed in the article I was reading, when suddenly everything seemed to stand still as the realization hit me. There were no other patients in the sleep lab tonight. Just me and Coma Guy. My head turned to the monitor instantly, in the dubious hope that maybe the patient had woken up. Nope, still on the bed, unresponsive, like a log. The footsteps were in the corridor, and they seemed to be going towards the sleep room. I swiveled in my chair and scrambled to the door, in long, hurried steps, almost leaping to it. I opened it and peered out. There was no one in the corridor. Just to be safe, I checked the nearby rooms, including the vacant sleep rooms. All the doors leading to the sleep lab were locked. Only my staff security swipe card can open those. I was safe and sealed in. It had been my imagination. Sighing and assuming it was probably nothing, I returned to the monitoring room. Another quick check that the recordings were in order, and I settled into my laptop routine again. With the computer fans humming away, the steady beep of the patient's heart rate, and nothing interesting online, I was on the verge of sleep. Thank God I never fell asleep then. Otherwise, that could have been my last ever nap. The steady sound of the patient's heart rate is what had almost lulled me into a trance, and it's the heart rate that woke me up again, with start. The patient's heart rate had spontaneously increased, very fast. I looked up eagerly at the EEG signal. It had changed, gotten quicker, responsive to something. Was the patient waking up? I stared at the infrared camera image, which was blurry, so I got up and went to look in through the window. Nothing. There was no movement, no change in the patient's consciousness, but his breathing and heart rate had increased. His brain activity had changed within the coma. Was he experiencing hallucinations? I stared at the stationary figure on the bed for some time in the darkness. And then, something within the room moved. At first, I thought it was the shadow of the cabinet on the other side of the room, but the shadow was moving, creeping. A black mass, creeping slowly towards the bed. I blinked, trying to be sure of myself. It was so dark that sometimes the mind creates shapes of darkness and shadows, illusions. No, it did seem to really be there. It was elongated.